Hello students, welcome to the video lecture series for the subject currency banking. Students, today I'll be talking about the history of the banking system and the types of banks. Now, the major impact in the banking section was introduced with the Swadeshi movement. जिस केस में क्या हुआ था कि many banks were established during this time from 1906 to 1911. Like banks like Bank of Baroda, Corporation Bank, Bank of India, Canara Bank, etc. were formed during those time periods. Now this is a reason, like since there was a strong political turmoil in the economy, and this led to basically the establishment of banks, because they were again funded by the various business political leaders. Okay, so in the initial years, three presidency banks, that is Bank of Bombay, Bank of Bengal, and Bank of Madras, came together and amalgamated, and later on they formed Imperial Bank of India. Like Imperial Bank of India till 1955, this bank was private. Now gradually this Imperial Bank was nationalized in this year, and now today it is known as State Bank of India. So in this case we can conclude that it is the State Bank of India which is among all the which among all the existing banks is the one of the oldest ones. It is one of the oldest. Now again, if I talk about the various functions, so initially, if I'm talking about the banks, obviously there are various banks. Those are central banks, commercial banks, schedules, investment banks, cooperative bank, and postal banks. Now सबसे पहला सेंट्रल बैंक हम ऑलरेडी इसके बारे में लाइव क्लासेस में भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. ये टॉप मोस्ट इंस्टीट्यूशंस होती हैं, इनको हम एपेक्स इंस्टीट्यूशन कहते हैं. इन इंडिया इट इज़ द रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, जो कि हर तरीके की सर्विसेज के लिए रिस्पॉन्सिबल है, फ्रॉम मैनेजिंग द करेंसी, फ्रॉम क्रिएटिंग द सप्लाई, from creation of from credit control, and being a custodian of foreign exchange, and also it is the lender of the last resort. It also gives you various services. Now these central banks are by and large they are owned by the government. तो हमारी कंट्री में भी RBI is the central bank and it is owned by the government. Now next comes the commercial banks. Now commercial banks, basically they actually represent the bank which we all know. They are actually involved into lending and depositing the money from the publics, from the business houses, and gradually mobilizing these savings in the form of investment in the economy. Thus, India, there are two types of commercial banks. Now, one is scheduled commercial banks and second is non-scheduled. Schedule, which comes under the second schedule of the Reserve Bank of India, 1934. They will be termed as scheduled banks, and non-scheduled banks, they don't cover themselves under this schedule. Okay, so now there are also certain examples. Now they are SBI, Axis Bank, HDFC. These are the certain examples of banks, commercial banks which actually operates in India. Now next comes the investments bank. As the name shows, it is basically involved into investing activities. They give their funds only to the business houses, and gradually they help in promoting in mobilizing these savings in the form of investments. Now, investment banks are the banks whose business is to underwrite the stocks and various bonds issue. Anything related to trade of these two is done by investment banks. Now, next comes the cooperative banks. Now, these banks which are owned by the depositors are called as cooperative bank. These banks are generally coming under non-profit entities. Generally, the banks in India are divided into scheduled and unscheduled, and RBI. That is the central bank. So scheduled banks are those banks which are listed under the second schedule of the RBI Act, which came into force on 1934. Now, when I'm talking about your cooperative banks, so obviously they are owned by the depositors only. They are basically, there are a group of people who deposit their money and gradually they are involved into these activities. So that is why they are termed as depositors bank. Okay, so these were the certain banks which actually operated under various heads in India. नाउ स्टूडेंट सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट है कि आपसे एक क्वेश्चन बहुत ज़्यादा पूछते हैं कि व्हाट आर द वेरियस फंक्शंस, व्हाट ऑल फंक्शंस अ बैंक एक्चुअली परफॉर्म. Now, when I'm talking about the functions, there are various services, various functions which a bank is performing. Before that, I want to discuss about types of deposits and the formalities they actually undergo with. Now, when I talk about types of deposits, like whenever you go to a bank, they ask you, okay, what type of account you want to open. Now, basically, there are various deposits which actually operate in India. Now, these deposits means the deposits which you hold in the form of money with the bank. So now, students, when I talk about type of deposits. So what is deposit? First of all, we know that bank is a such place where we deposit money. It वहाँ पर वो हम they keep our finances safe, and gradually we earn interest over them over a time. So like this is known as deposits, and to each deposit the bank assigns a unique identity which is known as your account. So each deposit again corresponds to unique account and vice versa. So sometimes we used to we use numbers to identify an account, जिसको हम account number बोलते हैं, and जो कि combination होता है alpha numeric letters का. Now, जब हम बात कर रहे हैं बैंक डिपॉजिट्स की, तो दे बेसिकली सर्व्स अस फॉर वेरियस पर्पसेस. सम पीपल since cannot save regularly, they deposit money in the bank only when they have an extra income. The purpose of deposit is then to keep money safe for future needs. Now, some may want to deposit money in a bank for long as possible to earn interest for a longer duration of time, to accumulate savings with interest so as to buy whatever asset you want. So most, and even there are business houses, they also deposit their money in deposits all the income from sales in a bank account, and gradually they pay all the business expenses out of these deposits. So like in this way we can basically classify our accounts in the four heads: saving bank account, current deposit account, fixed deposit account and recurring account. Saving नाम से क्लियर है कि ये वो टाइप ऑफ अकाउंट है उन लोगों के लिए प्रेफरेबल है जो थोड़ा थोड़ा करके सेव करना चाहते हैं. बेसिकली द पीपल हु गेट सैलरीज, पीपल हु वर्क एज अ लेबरर्स, दे कैन ओपन अकाउंट द मिनिमम इनिशियल डिपॉजिट्स के साथ. ना उसके बाद जब चाहे वो पैसे जमा कर सकते हैं, एंड ग्रेजुअली जब चाहे वो पैसे विड्रॉ कर सकते हैं. विड्रॉल के लिए देयर आर ऑप्शंस लाइक चेक और बाय यूजिंग एन एटीएम कार्ड. नॉर्मली बैंक्स पुट सम रिस्ट्रिक्शंस कि इतने नंबर ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस के ऊपर आप नहीं कर सकते हैं. नाउ इंटरेस्ट इज अलाउड ऑन द बैलेंस ऑफ डिपॉजिट इन द अकाउंट. द रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट ऑन दी सेविंग बैंक अकाउंट्स अगैन वेरीज फ्रॉम बैंक टू बैंक, बट अगर हम चारों अकाउंट में बोले तो इट इज मिनिमम, इट्स लीस्ट इन द केस ऑफ सेविंग अकाउंट. Now, next account which we talk about, that is current deposits. Basically ये business houses, companies, institutions, schools, hospitals खोलते हैं और वो इससे अपनी पेमेंट करते हैं. इस अकाउंट के साथ स्पेशल बात ये है कि overdraft facilities provided with this account. Since there are restrictions on the number of withdrawals, this account is not suitable for individuals. Okay, so now इसमें जब हम बात करते हैं बैंक दे लाइक ओपन करंट अकाउंट फॉर देम. इसमें क्या होता है कि जब भी अगर पैसा पेमेंट करना है तो आपको डेली मैनेज करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि अगर आपने पैसा कम सैंक्शन ज़्यादा कर दिया पेमेंट को और अकाउंट में पैसा नहीं है तो इन दैट केस आपको पेनल्टी पे करनी पड़ेगी. बट करंट अकाउंट में ऐसा नहीं है. यहाँ पर बैंक आपको कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं दे रहा, पर ओवरड्राफ्ट की फैसिलिटी दे रहा है कि इन केस अगर आप ओवरड्रॉ कर रहे हो अप टू अ लिमिट, उस पर वो आपसे अपने आपसे ओवरड्राफ्ट फैसिलिटी के चार्जेस लेता है, पर आपके चेक को कभी बाउंस नहीं करेगा. तो इन दैट केस देयर इज नो पेनल्टी. सो दैट इज नोन एज ओवरड्राफ्ट फैसिलिटी, जिस पे हम क्वेश्चंस पूछा जा सकता है. नो फॉर इसमें यही है कि फॉर द कन्वीनियंस ऑफ द अकाउंट होल्डर्स बैंक ऑल्सो अलाउ विड्रॉल ऑफ अमाउंट्स इन एक्सेस ऑफ द बैलेंस ऑफ डिपॉजिट्स. ओके, नाउ नेक्स्ट कम्स एफडी, फिक्स डिपॉजिट अकाउंट. नाम से क्लियर है कि जब कोई कस्टमर कुछ लंबे टाइम के लिए अपने अकाउंट पैसे को ब्लॉक करना चाहता है तो उस केस में वो अपने एफडी अकाउंट खोलता है. नाउ इन केस ऑफ सच डिपॉजिट्स दे ऑफर यू हाई इंटरेस्ट रेट. नाउ इफ मनी इज डिपॉजिट इन अ सेविंग बैंक अकाउंट, बैंक अलाउज अ लोअर रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. लेकिन अगर आप एफडी में डालते हो तो उतने टाइम के लिए ब्लॉक है, इसलिए बैंक आपको प्रमोट करने के लिए आपसे हाई रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट आपको देता है. ठीक है. सो इन दिस केस दिस इज अ अकाउंट वेर यू गेट where you block your capital for 5 years, 10 years, किसी भी टाइम ड्यूरेशन के लिए, बट एट अ लॉन्गर ड्यूरेशन, एंड ग्रेजुअली यू गेट द मैक्सिमम रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. ओके, नेक्स्ट इज रेकरिंग डिपॉजिट अकाउंट्स. रीअकर मीन्स जब आप एक फिक्स अमाउंट हर मंथ देना चाहते हैं तो उस केस में इट इज ऑलवेज एडवाइजेबल टू ओपन अ रेकरिंग डिपॉजिट. नाउ द टोटल डिपॉजिट अलॉन्ग विद द इंटरेस्ट देयरऑन इज पेबल ऑन मेच्योरिटी. Now, however, the depositor can also be allowed to close the account before the maturity, पर उस केस में they will not be getting the rate of interest. तो उस केस में the account can be opened by a person individually, jointly, or with anyone or any guardian in the name of the minor. Now, the rate of interest allowed on the deposit is higher than the saving bank account bank deposit, but it is again lower than the फिक्स डिपॉजिट्स. ओके, तो स्टूडेंट्स और रेकरिंग अकाउंट के लिए भी कुछ ऑप्शंस हैं जिसको आपको इतना डिटेल नहीं पढ़ना. तो स्टूडेंट्स, दीज वर ऑल द डिटेल्स अबाउट योर अकाउंट्स. सो जस्ट गो थ्रू इट, जस्ट रीड इट, and if in case any issues we can just have discussion in our live class. Thank you students. Thank you.